01. Let's see. Anyone have any issues with the February 10th minutes? That was our last meeting. Be straightforward. Nobody's on, so, okay. No? Motion to accept the minutes?
Moved.
It's all set. Next meeting is May 5th at 6. I think we might want to move it up to 5 because it's probably going to be another long agenda, but we'll see how it plays out. But I would kind of think about it as 5 or 6. Tonight, I'm hoping to close the meeting by 7 because we have an event right after the meeting. So we'll see how that goes. Correspondence. Got it. I received an inquiry from Rob Herman of N Consultants regarding the building of docks on bodies of fresh water on Shelter Island. And I advised him that under the then current code and the proposed code, that such structures were not permitted. I then received another inquiry from Beth Santillo on behalf of a client looking to build an inflatable dock on Fresh Pond, and I gave her the same advice that they're not permitted. I don't believe there was any other correspondence on the dock code, either for or against, but either way, that would be moot at this point. I did also receive a Board of Ethics opinion. This was Cronin versus me as chairman. I was conclusion of that decision, or the decision was based on the facts presented. The chairman's actions did not constitute a conflict of interest under state and local ethics laws, nor would our code of ethics require him to recuse himself from deliberations on a new island-wide dock code when considering docks on vacant lots. An allegation made at the public hearing by Tom Cronin was speculative and unfounded in our unanimous opinion because there is no evidence the chairman stood to gain any personal or private benefit from the proposed new dock code. So that was nice to hear. I also received a decision on a harassment claim, claim of harassment and bullying against me by member Loretto, by which he sought to have me removed as WMAC chairman. Conclusion of that decision was based on the facts presented. The WMAC chairman did not engage in conduct prohibited by the Town of Shelter Island policy against workplace discrimination or harassment, and recommended that the town board take no disciplinary action against the WMAC chairman. That so add that follows an earlier ethics claim against me by member Loretto, where, among other things, he sought to have me not participate in the redraft of Chapter 53, and that was also unanimously decided in my favor. So, bunch of correspondence. Have a, no, we don't have a liaison here?
Sitting here.
Just you? Do you have anything to add on their behalf? Okay. Briefing by Bay Constable.
No. I had a call from Jay Court. And he was expressing concern about Peconic Avenue and how there's been erosion there for quite a few years. It goes back to when he was highway superintendent. He noticed it, was aware of it. And he had started to work with both the DEC and with Cornell to consider doing something like putting rock armor in front of the town bulkheads and maybe to,
Peconic?
along Peconic, in an effort to try to get sand to possibly stay there.
Along private properties there, or?
I think he was, I don't know. I don't know. I know clearly he said maybe to go like to the furthest one to the west and Waterways and put rocks there and try to get that to start to collect some sand, because it's obviously it's gotten worse and it's getting worse every year. So it's just a consideration. He said, that he was working on it when he was highway superintendent. It just kind of died after that. So I just wanted to bring it up. He asked me to bring it up.
No, I think it's a good point. I think the blunt bulkheads are, create their own scouring and erosion and really tear up the beach. Anyone who's, we have one tonight that's, coming here, Lysaker, who wants to put, is it Lysaker? No, one of them wants to put boulders in front of a bulkhead, and it should be like state of the art at this point, because it just breaks up all that energy and sends it in different directions. It's, I think, part of what the Army Corps of Engineers is starting to require. There was just an article about it, Scientific American. Yeah, it would be quite a expense, I think, on the town's part to do the public sections, but look at it.
And maybe grants, but it's something, and I don't think anything should be initiated without speaking to the people that live there.
Okay, well,
That are going to be affected are the ones that.
Well, the sand loss out there is just getting worse and worse every year. It's not getting any better. So,
Right, right. And that's clearly, Jay was in office, 10 years ago, and and people are complaining now that it's because of the dock. I find that hard to believe.
sure, the new docks don't help anything down there, but
no, the docks just create more scouring. It's just,
yeah. But
any way to,
ongoing issue that's getting worse.
Well, if anything, wouldn't that be more likely to break up the wave action as it's coming in? Just from I'm not a marine scientist, but I just think common sense wise, that it would be less likely to cause more erosion than more likely.
he reviewed half a dozen articles on scouring and splashboards and groins and bulkheads. And just Google it. There's a ton of information about how the energy gets driven down into the bottom, scours it out. The waves take it, whatever direction the current's going at that time. A hard surface out in the water redirects the energy right down. So it's problematic. Any of those should have some way of breaking up that energy. But yeah, I'm not an engineer. I'm just repeating what I've read. Anyone else have any correspondence that I know you just had something, but
Yeah, it's too late, so
yeah,
next time.
that's a whole discussion, but.
Yep.
So where was I? Bay Constable.
I'll be clear. So, first of all, congratulations, guys. Thanks to Doc Code, fantastic, a lot of hard work on everybody's part, the town board, everybody, the public.
And thanks for Article 2.
Yep, I was a contributing member as well, which is great. Seriously, that was, it was a lot, you guys really deserve a round of applause for that. I'm also really glad to see that we kind of use some of our other policies and procedures in the town, right? The ethics board, working through stuff like that. It's okay to disagree. We can continue to have discourse without discord and work our way through it and be grown-ups and move forward. I'd like to see all that happening, right? That's fantastic. Maybe have these mechanisms and we're using them. So congratulations on that as well. From the Bay Constable world, all of our ACE navigation are in, right? So that's good. Tomorrow's the deadline. We got done last week.
Rather rough conditions last week.
Yeah, you saw that.
I'm looking at it, I'm like inside the boat.
Okay, we don't need a new boat. It's fine.
I'm watching, trying to put that thing on a trailer. This is
It was blowing.
got it right on.
No, it all worked out good. All the anchorage buoys, the swim area buoys, will be going in around mid-May, early May, somewhere in there. We try not to put that stuff in too early, speed up. So anyway, that's all done. And then just the update, as I've been keeping you guys abreast sort of our work boat replacement challenge 2025. We have effectively stopped making any forward progress on that, and it's been functionally tabled, pending some changes or developments that I can't foresee currently. So we're gonna keep cruising along, doing what we're doing, and we'll revisit it at another time when the time's right. So that's all I have.
So a couple of weeks ago, the reporter in an article, I think quoted you, which it wasn't a quote, that no grants were available, but there are grants available.
So
They're available at least for the pump out boat. And I was told by the manager of the clean vessel
It's AP, but I can't remember. what it
assistance
means.
program,
Thank you.
yeah, that she didn't see any reason why that vessel couldn't be used for both purposes, and that the grant wouldn't be a problem getting the grant. And the grant is for up to 75% of a cost for an $80,000 vessel, so 60 grand on an $80,000 vessel.
So, yes, it's the short answer to that. Everything, much of the coverage in that article was a bit mixed up. There's a lot of bits of information in there that weren't necessarily in the right order, right from the beginning. Nonetheless, there was no grant money apparently available for a workboat, right? Which is what we were originally, there was no intention to include any pump out capacity at the outset of the design of this vessel, right?
That was an afterthought.
That was an afterthought for the purpose of trying to get some grant money, right? And so I looked at that stuff, and we had had a brief exchange with a town's grant writer a few weeks prior to me going to the town board, and through her vacations and schedules and whatever. We didn't really have any answer whatsoever from her on a sort of a line to try to proceed, because I had at least theoretically pitched, let's redesign this so we're designing a pump out boat that then we could use as a workboat, or vice versa, either way,
Okay.
to try and get at least a portion of it covered by a grant, right? The grant, those grants are not going to cover the workboat portion of whatever it is. So it's a whole complex thing that you can figure out what gets used for what, and then they prorate the amount that they'll cover. Long story short is I didn't actually hear back on a strategy from the grant writer until this morning.
Oh.
This morning, which is encouraging, but like I said, there has been no development, no change, no plan to move forward beyond what we've established so far. And quite frankly, I don't know that I'm going to have the time, energy, and access to work on that stuff again until we get further along in the season. So it's just tabled for the time being, right? Not dead and buried, but not making progress.
Okay.
And we're gonna look at grants, obviously.
Well, if it's a financial issue that's holding things up, then hopefully the grants will get that movement again.
Right, it's gonna require redesigning the hull and going backwards to go forwards to do that. So we're trying to avoid that to begin with, but we may.
In the email I sent, whatever, a month or two ago,
Mhm.
I identified the major builder of the pump out boat.
Yeah,
And they didn't see a problem working that in. So
right. The major difference there is it's a similar size fiberglass hull. And so it's not really apples to apples specifically, but it gives us a point of reference, which is fantastic. And moving forward, we'll use that with the grant writer to try and figure out where all this might fit in.
Okay. Great,
All right,
thanks.
thank you.
Let's see. So as far as my briefing goes, so Chapter 53 amendment has been adopted. WMAC did a lot of work on this and on this document, made a lot of changes. Only a small percentage were opposed, and those have been addressed in this final version. So this newly adopted code, among other things, eliminates contradictory provisions we had in there before, clarifies a number of ambiguous, hopefully all ambiguous sections, makes it easier to maintain docks, and it removes the necessity for variances in certain situations. And it also adds a level of protection for our entire shoreline. So it, we all spent a lot of time on this, and I think it was a great job. And everyone seems satisfied with the result, so it was a good thing. Next item is Smith Cove. I had this under other business, but I just want to bring it up now. Last year, Bert Waif had mentioned that Sag Harbor received a special permit from the state to extend the regulatory jurisdiction beyond the 1,500 feet from the shoreline over in Sag Harbor. And I believe this is something that we should really examine and pursue for the Smith Cove area, because it's turned into a transient mooring area for mega yachts. And it's really changed the level of activity in that area. We had, last year, we also had the, I guess, chairman or whatever his title is, Stuart Israel from the South Ferry Hills Homeowners Association came in and asked us if we could place a couple of 5-mile-an-hour buoys in that area. And I think they would probably be within the 1,500 foot that we do control. So that's would be part of it. Part of the issues concerning Smith Cove. And the other is Mark Ween. Mark, you with us now? There he is. Had raised an issue regarding oyster leases that are now being offered in Smith Cove. And Mark,
He's muted.
you unmute?
Yeah, what was the question?
Regarding, you had raised the issue with me about oyster leases in Smith Cove.
Right.
And did you have any other, did you look at?
I wasn't able to get any more information. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
But it was a concern of yours.
It was what?
A concern of yours?
It was a concern of some people who lived around there for a little while, but I gave them an opportunity to formalize their concern, and they never responded. So I assume that they're not concerned now. But that's just an assumption.
Okay. Well, other issues then on Smith Cove.
I was in touch with the town engineer. I had a quick conversation on that side a week or so ago, and apparently there's 2 leases in that area that are up for, I guess, approval. That's basically what it was. It's one of many around the.
Yeah, I think one is closer inside of Smith Cove. The other is out near Majors, the mouth of Majors.
Yeah, I had asked him whether they fall in town jurisdiction or not. And I think that he should check into that before any permits are issued or anything, because if they're in town jurisdiction, I believe the town has say over whether there's an oyster farm in their waterways, if we have control over those waterways.
The one outside of Majors Cove was leased once before.
Yep.
Last year it
This one is
wasn't.
closer to the north. I guess it would be the north. It's kind of out in the middle, right, Bo?
Yeah, it's further north.
Are they side by side? I think there's 2 of them.
No, it's further north. The one that Johnson, so the one that was outside of Majors so I think they're 10-year leases, and he just gave his up, he didn't renew it.
Oh, he didn't renew that?
Yeah, he has a house on the island here. So he had a on-bottom operation there, right? That's
Yeah.
all the hose were, but there was nothing on the surface
Right.
growing. And then that other lease wasn't awarded previously. I don't know if it didn't exist previously or if it wasn't awarded in that last round, meaning 10 years ago. I know that there was applicants for both of those leases, but I don't know if they were listed as, I think they're offered 3 spots to, for your preference, and they were in the till for somebody's preferences, but I don't think they were necessarily number 1 on anything. Fairly certain that they all fall inside of the state waters, not town waters. The bottom issue potentially could be if some of them, I think they're outside 1,500 feet, to be honest with you. But it's, the maps
I
are
have to look
available.
at the map,
The
yeah.
maps are available, it's not
Yeah.
difficult to find information about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we should be looking at it for the 5-mile-an-hour buies for the leases and just
Right,
figure
so-
out where we are in
Just to
there.
go back to that for 1 second, right? 1,500 feet, we can do anything we want, okay? But you gotta pass a law to do it. So.
Yeah.
If you want 5-mile-an-hour buoys out there, you gotta ask the town attorney to draft legislation and amend town code, probably 128, right? That's how it works. We can throw 5-mile-an-hour buoys anywhere we want, they carry no legal authority if there's no law behind them authorizing it. So we have the authority to do anything we want out to that realm, right, out to 1,500 feet. We just need to pass a law to exercise that right.
Let me just say, yeah, it's simple, yeah, does it require a public
No
hearing?
problem, yeah.
I'm out.
It takes 1 week. Back to the oyster thing real quick. I know the town doesn't have the responsibility or anything, but how do we ensure that when an oyster lease is not renewed, that all gear is removed from that location? Because that is in fact an issue around the Peconics. So I'm just wondering, how do we,
So
How does that-
I would say if there's a concern, right, you report to the agency having jurisdiction, that would be us, the police department. And then we would kick that up to the regulating authority, which is,
Suffolk County?
Suffolk County Health Department, I think issues.
Oh, it's the health department that
Is it the health department that issues those?
There's something weird
It's
going
a
on.
weird thing. I can find out who they, but they notice the town, right? They put, ads in the legal section, there's notices that go up here, I think they sent them out.
Yeah,
Christina or somebody sent them out when they came.
yeah, I get them as well. Somebody
Right.
sends them to me,
So
yeah.
we have a handle on their availability and, presumably, if a permit is issued, we get that information as well. So I guess if you don't get notice that there's a permit issued, it's fair to assume that it's not being used anymore.
Yeah,
But if there's no issue related to the gear, then there's no issue anyway. So report the issue that somebody might have with the gear, and we'll make sure it gets to the appropriate person.
okay, because it's a pretty broad problem, along with the markers for the grounds. I know that there's one in between, Jessup's and, the point there. There's one that's a stick out there that's right at the surface level.
Yeah, so that's South Old Town jurisdiction,
Okay.
right?
One over by Jessup's? Yeah, that's Burt, right?
No, it's
It's
in
north of
between,
that, closer to,
to,
I know,
and towards,
Hog
that
Neck?
point there.
there's Nassau Point,
Oh, way west, going,
No, when you're coming from Jessup's to, if you're heading towards like Greenport or something.
oh,
It's right in that stretch there, right in that channel, there's a,
That's Paradise?
yeah, between that, Jessup's and Paradise, there's a stick in the water there that's,
So there's no positive obligation on the leaseholder to actually notice, or there is?
to notice,
To notice,
note
hey,
itself.
yeah, to say my lease is up. And, because you said like, well, no news basically means, hey, it's not really being leased out anymore. As opposed to the lease is over, I'm pulling my stuff, I have pulled my stuff.
I'm sure that there's an obligation to the the issue, the permitting
Health,
authority,
Suffolk Health.
to say, I'm giving this up and I told them my year out. There's probably nobody takes a ride out there to see if that actually occurred.
Right. And
Yeah.
is there any logging of actual locations where things were actually on bottom, or is that too much information to try to? Because I know they do the box.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But
well,
do they
that's
do
what you
anything where,
do.
you know, within that, it's like, I have
Within
10,
that box, if the box is still,
so we don't
Let's say
get
I've got
too
10
off topic
10
here.
traps
Why don't I do a little investigating with the county to find out kind of what it was, and then I'll come back at the next meeting.
It's the
Okay, thanks,
Department, it's the Department of Economic Development and Planning, Sarah Lansdale.
That's what I thought. I use the acronym.
I'll forward you your correspondence.
I have a lot of stuff from them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just don't know what the name. It's just the county, they got a lot of bureaus and divisions.
Okay. Great, thanks. So that's it for my briefing. So on to applications. First one is Dish Bulkhead application, 10 Club Drive. Yes, this is the one that has the bulkhead and stone. I didn't see any issues with it. I don't know if anyone else had.
to your point earlier, I really like that idea of the stones. It's like, it's obviously an issue. It's nice that people are getting ahead of it.
Jack, on behalf of the applicant, any questions here?
So do you recommend the stone, or do people ask for the stone, or is it just you kind of lay out a design and?
Considering just where the direction it's facing, you know, there's gotta be some sort of armor that's vinyl achievement. So they gotta do something, they gotta armor with, you know, timber or armor it with stone. They just prefer to put the stone, because we're gonna do the stone retaining walls, take the CCA retaining walls out, so it'll look nice. And like I said, it'll disperse the wave action. But it's also, you know, for a lot of people, it's an additional cost, it's a major additional cost.
Yeah, I would think.
And they're willing to, you know, do, so the whole design is what everybody wants, you know, like shortening the jetty to meet low water, it's a pretty simple application.
But that would typically extend, you expect that would extend the life of the bulkhead because it's got that armor.
Yeah, I mean, if you're out there, something floating around, it's getting bashed up against the bulkhead, and the stones are gonna help, you know.
Yeah, I see all sorts of things lodged in those stones
Yeah.
these days, where they are.
It used to be very difficult about the stones below, you know, below water, you know, in the water table. But they've kind of loosened up a little bit. They're allowing us to put the stones, you know, in the water also. That's not the case with this particular application, but they've loosened up about the stone armor, which is good.
Does that end up coming back when, if you want to make changes? Because I know over at Ram's Head Inn, there was a whole issue with the stones that were there. Once they were there, then it's kind of like, yeah, now you can't move that. Because I remember that being an issue with the dock. You had to get over the stones that were placed, and they looked like they were placed.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know where those stones came from or whatever. They're just there. So that's not the situation in this particular application.
Thank God.
Sorry, I didn't mean to bring up.
On the retaining walls, the WMAC doesn't have any jurisdiction at all, so that's out of our.
it's all in place.
Yeah, they're removing the CCA tie walls and putting the stone walls in place, you know, bolts.
Yeah.
So it's better. In another situation.
Upland, yeah. You have any other issues with it? No? Matt? Scott, we good?
Yeah.
Skylar? Mark? You're on mute, but I think that was, I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay. All right, so what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 0 in favor. Next is Mayor Lysacker or Mayor, I know him as both.
That's okay.
Lysacker? So this one was slightly confusing just because of the permits. Had a permit covered 102 feet, but that was an old permit that's been modified and updated. And it's extended out to June 28. And it's really just the southernmost 37 feet that's being done.
Yeah, it was the one piece of bulkhead that was never done. We did it section by section over the years. Now this piece is failed from the original bulkhead, whatever, 40 years ago.
This isn't part of it was different repair that was done there before, right? Was the, like northern?
Replaced the first section to the west, and the middle section, and it's now the last section that goes, like Gary Shear, one piece that never got done. So there was one old section, it's just money. It's 37 feet left, and now it's failed.
Okay.
We gotta get in there expeditious fashion and take care of it.
I didn't see any other issues with it. Once I worked through what was going on with the permits, it looked fine to me.
In kind, in place, it's gotta be done. You say it has, it has failed, you said, right?
Yeah, it's empty right now. The last section's been replaced, Shears has been replaced, so we don't want to lose those. So yeah, it's just a straight up in-kind replacement.
Yep.
You good? Good. Tom, good. I'm good. Skylar? Mark?
Good.
Okay. 6-0 in favor of mayor. Let's see, the Conrad mooring is next. Can we get a view of where that's at?
Yeah, I didn't see a map with this, I was just,
Yeah, no, I'm kind of wondering where it's at myself.
the coordinates in there, but.
Still need to spend an afternoon with Bo.
Telling you, the camera will have you fully flown.
Can you zoom out again real quick? I just want to show which body of water that is. It's been, oh, that's Burns Road, okay. Okay. I guess this grid wasn't full. Is this a new location?
Now, I'm fairly certain that they're applying to take over whoever C2, what's it?
2644. Yeah, it'd be full,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
so it's a
somebody just
table.
gave it up. And they-
Okay.
But that grid's not full.
Oh, it's not?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is,
It's a small boat.
Does this information get logged in the mooring database? This stuff can't be right. This stuff isn't the right structure. The whole ID number and the registration. I mean, it's clerical, but
What's wrong with it?
it's, I don't know what, and single whole ID number that looks like that or registration.
Yes,
It's the wrong
okay.
format, yeah.
Yeah. Well, they've got. Okay, so it's SXSK is the
The thing
beginning
above.
of it. It's on the registration on the back,
Okay.
Oh,
0164.
That's the whole ID number, that SK number.
97.
And then the NY761 is probably what they want for registration.
Yeah, that's the
It's just
registration
It's just
number.
written in there wrong, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So if that does get logged in, then yes, those numbers are all screwed up.
I can write it down. Is that all right? Can we do that for now?
Yeah,
All right, so I'll just correct it.
okay. So that location is a previous location with a similar size boat.
I don't know what. I can't speak.
Oh, this is
You
only,
can click on, shoot, if you want, you're on Google Earth, yeah, if you're logged in, you can still. 644.
no, it's available.
Yes, you'd have to go. You can click on that. Okay, yeah, it's because it's access. I can find out who was, somebody there who I know they just gave it up the other day.
It's a similar sized boat, you know of, not offhand?
Yeah, can you just do a measurement to 3337 and just see what, that's the closest one.
Left and up a little bit. 3, 3, 3.
There you go. Like 70 feet? Yeah, that's plenty. Not that deep there, so. Yeah, it looks like it should be fine.
Yeah, should they submit a map with that, or it's because it's a takeover? No, you know, that's the only thing.
You know, I just noticed it because I like to.
Yeah.
Map, but, doesn't bother me that it's not there. I mean, in protocol, I don't know whether it's supposed to be there or not, but.
It says it at the top.
Googled this detailed map,
There
they
you go.
didn't provide it and they didn't check it off.
Well,
They didn't try to scam us.
they were consistent, right?
Yeah, probably because it's an existing location, I don't think it's, I mean,
It's a pre-assigned location.
we should have it, but we're not creating a new spot, so I think it's all right.
Okay.
Matt, anything else?
I think that's fine.
No?
I'm good on it, yeah.
Good. What happened to Mark?
Yeah, right. He's gone.
I think he was taken over by the
He's out in the
morning.
bay right now. He's looking.
You good, Mark? Conrad?
Yes, yep.
All right, again, 6-0. Next. So we've got Fagan and we have Kramer. So, yeah, let's do Fagan. I am going to recuse myself on Fagan since I've been for a long time. And it is recommended that in such situations by the Ethics Committee, which I've had a lot of experience with lately, basically town officials in instances where for any reason they may feel that they have a bias or personal connection that would potentially make it harder for them to put public interest above any private interest. So Matt will handle the proceedings on Fagan, and I will get out of here and then just text me when we're done. You what?
I'm gonna want to take a break.
Yeah.
I'm going to disclose that I'm friends with the Fagans, and I have been for a long time. I have no financial gain or chance of any financial gain from their application. So I don't feel the need to recuse myself. I'm going to be very direct and very upfront. Before they bought the house, they asked me, as a member of the Waterways Committee, do I think that they would be eligible for a dock sometime in the future? And based on the laws that were there at the time and what are in place now for what she's applying for, I had told them yes, and I'm sure that would influence the decision on buying that house. So I want to disclose that.
All right, so this is an application to build a kayak launch in Dickerson Creek. Take us through.
Jack Costello on behalf of the applicant. It's a simple dock, kayak launch. It's within the overall length, it's 90 feet from mean high water. The seaward ends, so that's well within the code. It meets 5 foot, it's got a 35-foot setback, exceeds the code. Both things, one's less, one's more. I mean, it should be an easily acceptable application. We've done, many of these docks on Shelter Island, over the years. So there's certainly, precedent in these types of structures going on the creeks of Shelter Island recently. So we kept it as minimum as possible. That would adhere to the rules of the DEC. We have a DEC permit, Army, Department of State. Everybody, felt very good about this application and kind of like what seemingly encouraged it to keep the people from walking through the marsh to access their boat. This was the most environmentally friendly way to approach access. And there has been, and I say that the last dock built in Dickerson Creek was for you guys, the town.
Do you,
Might be of note that the last trip the town built in there was in navigable also.
Right, well, like I said, they're calling this navigable, when I have all,
I know they're
required
calling
permits.
I know what they're calling it, and then they're calling it one thing on the plan too, and I don't agree with either of it, but go ahead, Matt.
so do you have the Corps of Engineers letter that wasn't in the package?
I have the permit.
Okay, because that wasn't, I mean, did anybody else? I don't think it was part of the package. So that would be helpful. So the plans that were sent in, or that are here in front of us, those are from April of 2024? Because on what I see is that it's approved on the basis of those plans on the April 2024.
Yeah,
So
April 8th, 24.
So the question, so, and then what changed between that and the previous? Because it's submitted as a dock and then it's come back as a kayak launch.
That's what they wanted it called. So
Who wanted it called that?
that was just the verbiage that we were required to use.
By,
And calling it the kayak launch because of the depth of the water. That's just, we're not calling this a regular dock, it's calling it a kayak launch. So we just changed the usage of the dock. You know what I'm saying? So we changed the usage.
so so what is the usage then? It's for what purpose?
Kayak launch.
So it's a launch, so it's not going to be, because in the permit it says no vessel mooring. So it's just, there's not going to be a vessel at this dock?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be for water access. So they'll be, it's for a kayak launch, that's what it's for. That's what it was dictated by the DEC. I have the DEC permit here, I have the Army Corps permit and the Department of State.
So the DEC asked you to, they said they didn't approve it as a dock. And then they said to you that they wanted you to come back as a kayak launch?
But we came back because they wanted it elevated higher.
They wanted it elevated, okay.
Yeah. So it's more of a water access dock. I mean, you can use it for multiple things. They're not dictating what it can be used for. I mean, you can fish it, I'm not calling it a fishing pier, but people can fish off of it. We discussed the usage of these docks, of what they can be used for, but I'm not gonna, list all the different uses of a dock.
Okay, but, all right,
But do you want the Army Corps permit?
I'm not gonna be able to review it, I don't think.
It's the same as the DEC permit.
But the DEC permit says that there's no mooring there, or no mooring of boats, and it's not to be used for launching. So my question is, if it's a kayak launch, and it's not allowed to be used for launching boats, vessels, how can the permit is internally inconsistent? It says no launching of boats.
What gets confusing with the DEC permit is the general conditions. And if you want to look at it, you got to look at the stamped plans. Because if you go through their general rules, they're not always consistent with what the stamped plans are. So you really got to refer to what they approved through the plans.
But in the verbiage in the permit says it's not to be used for that, and you just said that it was actually, they asked for the change because it's shallow. And so it's not going to be used for.
Well, what they asked for was the elevation change.
Right. So and the elevation changed at the beginning, so that's why the change was changed from being a direct access roll down to steps up, and then.
Yep.
So they wanted clearance?
They want the dock above the vegetation.
Matt, let me just point out a couple
I'm
of
not
things.
interested, I mean,
Go
do you have
ahead.
questions for him, or?
I'd just like to point out a few things that,
You got the wrong, I have the wrong permit information. I think this is the older one.
we've approved over the last 3 years.
Yeah, the
I
same
have one
thing.
that looks old, like 23, November
Because this is
23.
not the one I saw on the computer a
It's
little while
very,
ago.
which one do you have? It's very similar.
Actually, not.
Look, I have a question about this too. Oh,
This is the one I have, and it's not
Yeah,
the
this is
same as the computer.
What's in front of us is not, yeah,
And this is not what I was looking at on the computer.
this is what I'm talking about. This was the original submission.
Oh, so this is the original, okay. So
You should have one dated.
we
I
don't
saw, I
have,
saw, I saw it in my email, but it's not here yet.
the one that was on the computer that I was looking at is not this one.
It had like detailed drawings. and stuff.
Yeah, well, the plan was different too. It was a whole different,
Yeah, this is totally different.
packet, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah, well, we've submitted, several packages over, so there could be a lot of confusion because we had to resubmit all new plans several times because of the moratorium.
Okay. Well, I have the wrong packet in front of me.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question really quick? If that's all right? There's like reference to like it looks fixed on this, and then there's like floats and stuff. Is that the difference between the two?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no float.
Okay.
There's no float, there was never a float. There's
Got
no
it.
floats. You have to have, 2.5 feet for the float. The change was the inshore end, the elevation of the inshore end.
Is this thing called with plastic floats on it not relevant to this, or is that?
Now, that's the height. Yeah, hydrographic there.
Not sure where the plastic.
That's the neighbor's dock. This is just a hydrographic. This
I missed that. Sorry.
Okay, so this
I got
is the
misled.
problem.
Sorry.
That's what's there and.
That's just hydrographic mapping.
So. Guess what, you were speaking.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we've approved 3 in the last couple of years, all right? A catwalk in way less than 2 feet of water. Mara was 1.4 feet of water. Cohen was 0.3 feet of water, and both of those were in 2022. And Gabor was 0.4 feet of water in 2020. And those were clearly, they were kayaks or 4 kayaks. This is 2 feet of water. No, now how navigable you want to say 2 feet of water is a whole nother issue. Okay? The family has a boat that has a 13-inch draft. That's probably the use. That would be the most rational use for them. And I think that's pretty reasonable. And 2 feet of water is being low water there.
You have the original. How many times has it been mentioned?
I mean, to keep the 13-footer there?
Basically, it's very.
A boat with a 13-inch draft should not be a problem in 2 feet of water.
And then the
I
old
have seen
used to 9
satellite
from
imagery
water.
of
The
scouring.
based from high water. So, or it doesn't matter.
What year was that photograph from?
I can't recall.
It was way before they bought the house, and it was in an area that's not where they want to put the dock.
I've seen a couple of different satellite images, where there was scouring at different locations out in front of that section of, the creek there. I've seen it.
Right.
I personally dragged my flat bottom skiff out of that creek at low tide because I couldn't run the outboard. But I definitely disagree that there's navigable water there and leading out to the bulkheaded area.
Well, I'm going to disagree highly with that. I mean, I run in there all the time. I run in there pretty regularly with my little boat. I don't take a big boat in there.
Yeah, no,
I take a little boat in there.
yeah, well, I'm saying going over.
And they also have
I say that there's no water there, regardless of what anybody else has. I've
Okay.
personally experienced it.
Okay,
The plan was in there for decades.
So the hydrographic just came back, it has 2 feet to the dock, to the end of the dock.
right.
And there's not 2 feet leading to the rest of the navigable section, which is up by the bulkhead. It shallows again.
So if you.
Well, there's a channel that runs along the bulkhead and runs right through his house.
Yeah, and I have always.
If you stay outside of the grass along there, there's plenty of water. Plenty of water, not for a big boat, for a little boat, there's plenty of water.
I was running a 16-foot flat bottom skiff with a little 8-horse on it, so
Okay.
there's not enough water in there for that.
There's not enough water on an extreme low tide.
So I guess
Okay.
It's a provision, I think it's provision 13 or 14. It says no mooring of a boat at this dock, this kayak launch. It's in the permit. And we don't have the permit, as issued by the DEC in front of us. It's not part of our package. But I can tell you, I reviewed it. it says no mooring or launching of boats from the dock. It's provision 13 or 14. If you have it in front of you, you can read it out.
Okay.
14.
Well, our code, chapter 90, section 11, letter B, says riparian owners may apply for a permit to install either a stake mooring pulley and pulley system or a dock commencing from their property, but they may not install both. And you have a letter here saying that they would like to rescind their mooring.
Sure.
So,
Which is,
you know,
that's great. I mean, that, I think the one or the other, and I think that
okay,
works.
okay. So,
From
so they're looking for exactly what's in our code.
the permit that's in front of us says that
What
you're not allowed to.
what you're referring to is not part of your code.
You're showing me a permit from the state.
Right.
That says you can't do what's just been described as you want.
It says you can't have motorized vessels intentionally powering the shallow waters.
No. It says mooring or launching from that structure.
Is that in this packet? Sorry, I just want to read it.
It's not in our packet.
Oh, that's fine. I'm just asking to see it.
That's why it's a bit frustrating because it's not.
I don't have anything in front of me.
Yeah.
So like I said, these are DEC regulations, these are not your regulations. So I'm saying what you're referring to is not part of your code. But you can reference it right here, I have it in front of me. You should have this in your package.
It's not. U14, use of the structure. The authorized structure is provided for access to the waterway and is not intended for the mooring or launching of vessels. That's the permit that you provided to us.
Is it in your code what the description of a vessel is?
What do you think a vessel is?
Motorized boat. I mean, something, would you call a kayak a vessel?
Yes. And I looked at the state code and I looked at our current code, and our future code, and a vessel is something that floats on the water. I actually thought that was pretty, well, it's a vessel, so it's quite small, and yet it's a vessel. So you can look at the state regulations. They say it's a vessel. Our town says it's a vessel. So, well, I guess what I'm saying is there are a couple of other things in here that make me confused about the origin of the state permit and how it came to pass. And I think it's that somehow the state was convinced that a kayak launch could somehow be a fixed dock. My perspective as a regular kayaker, launching a kayak from a fixed dock or a ladder is a disaster. Something you can't do. You try to climb down a ladder, you're putting a foot in the middle of the cockpit, you go in the water, you drag your face down barnacles on the ladder. So in my view, the kayak launch is a low floating dock you get into, you push your kayak off of that low floating dock, or you put the kayak in the water next to the dock and you slide your butt in and then you go off. That is a kayak launch. Kayak launch is not a fixed dock. So somehow the state has been convinced that a fixed dock is a kayak launch. And then it's been backfilled to be that this fixed dock here, 36 feet or whatever portion, is a kayak launch and therefore should be approved. But that's not a kayak launch. And that's why there are all these different confusions. Like for instance, you have your plans show an 8-inch diameter pile. In the permit, it limits to 6.
Generally speaking, as far as the DEC goes, landward, mean low water in these marshy areas are 4x4s.
Right.
And then seaward of mean low water, they allow up to 8-inch piles.
Right, but in the permit, landward is 4x4, and then the piles are 6. So what I'm thinking
6 inch,
is,
there is no float. It's not even, it says 6-inch diameter piling for the float. There is no float. There's a lot of these things, these
Exactly.
general conditions.
That's my point.
That don't speak to this.
I don't think it's general conditions. I think it's written specifically for a float, a kayak launch, which is the low float in the water. And because this has now become a fixed dock, that's a kayak, that's being called a kayak launch when it went in, being called a dock, it's created confusion. You've got internal inconsistencies within your permit. I think that's how it happened. But it comes out in your permit that it's not allowed to be used for the purpose that you're talking about using it for, either for the launch or for bringing up a 13-foot boat and mooring it there. It's not allowed in your permit.
It's allowed in the town permit.
It's allowing the structure. So, I mean, like I'm saying, you see,
You can't build your structure and comply with the permit.
The permit has ambiguities in it, clearly, all right?
It's actually-
However, now, how did these other three?
I wasn't on the committee.
Okay.
I mean,
It's,
I'm just pointing
You're-
out what's in front of me, what's
Yeah.
being delivered to us.
yeah,
It's not consistent, and it says what's
Right.
being proposed
Yeah.
can't be done and be compliant with the permit. And now you're asking us to double down on that. And I'm saying, why should we do that?
they
I
have,
mean, I think it's
They have-
fine if you want to go address that again with the state.
and I think you're being, I just think you're being overly restrictive to someone has a waterfront property, who is asking for access to the water, all right? And has been waiting for over a year because they had applied and started this whole process before the moratorium, all right? These people want to be able to enjoy the water in front of their house. And you're looking to stop them. Let's face it, you're looking to stop them. All right? Dickinson Creek has 4 other existing docks in it: Tesla, Hewitt, Shelter Island Town Float, and the Shelter Island Police Boat. All right, 4 other docks. It's got 4.
No, there's
Four.
3 docks. There's
There's 4.
Town, there's the next
Police
one.
boat, there's the town float, there's Tesla, and there's Hewlett. There's 4. There's over 400 feet of bulkhead in there. 400 feet.
All of these existing structures are up at what I would call the navigable dredge section of a bulkheaded area. Where this dock is proposed is in a shallow area that I don't feel is navigable regardless of what these.
It's next to an existing dock. The neighbor has a dock.
This is another thing that I saw on, this is the new one, yes. This is the one I was watching.
And this is the 2 feet of navigable water.
Yeah, this dock was not in that configuration last year, and this is the owner's dock on the owner's boat on the dock. None of this was in the configuration it was in last year. That was something else that I noticed on this
Let
permit.
me check the date on the hydrographic and I can tell you what the
Yeah, because I
hydrographic.
know that configuration was
And did-
this year.
Mark or
It's
Scott,
not
do you have any
necessarily
thoughts?
connected to this permit.
I'd like to see some of the other stuff that we don't have. I mean, you read some of it, which was helpful, but
Right. I was able to look at some of it because I guess it was in the email.
There's a proposal to allow commercial docks on the town bulkhead and float for 9 months of the year.
Area of that creek, yes.
Yeah, I mean, and their home is a few feet from that channel, from that very, very navigable channel that can accommodate a few large boats.
Have to get.
What is putting a 13, with having a dock
So this is.
and having a
amended
boat that has a
August 24th.
13-inch
I
draft
don't know what the September.
in 2 feet of water at its lowest point? What's the
I also have
problem?
an upload of this.
Well,
But this is what it looked like as
one,
of June 24.
we're looking to.
So a year ago.
Well, this is really,
That's
this is really
what-
not effective.
What's happening-
This will not come across our desks again, because now we have a 2.5 foot.
Agree.
So there's
on
no
the
more,
depth.
there's no precedent.
Al, I agree on the depth.
I just.
What I have
that's
an issue with is saying that the permits from the DEC don't matter. In the past, I believe you and other folks have said very consistently, well, we don't need to do these things because we have the state permit process. And people go through the state permit process. Why are we trying to further burden people? Because we have the state permit process. And now you're saying, here's a permit with provisions that block exactly what's being described. and you're saying we should ignore the state permit and just go forward. That I have a problem with. I don't think that's okay. I don't have an issue particularly with people putting in kayaks there. Frankly, a kayak dock that actually was a kayak float, like a launch that I would envision when I hear of a kayak launch, I think that's okay.
But
What I don't think is okay.
But the DEC is not gonna allow a float in less than 2 feet of water. So that, that's.
I'm not you just said, I'm not the DEC. I agree. I think a kayak float allows people to get over the grass,
Mhm,
launch their kayak in a safe way,
right?
because launching a kayak from a fixed dock in a ladder is not safe. It's only a foot and a half of water. You sit there, you flip over, you crack your head on the ladder, which happens all the time. And then it's not an appropriate match with what's being described.
Does it make sense? I mean, sorry, from a logistics standpoint, to just get in the water and get in the kayak, but not disturb the vegetation on the way down?
They don't want to go through the vegetation, and like I said, we're applying to the town based on your code.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's, I mean, and this adheres to your code.
And that the DEC strictly saying that you can't launch from it, like, is it really right to overlook that? I mean, to me, it seems like you should be able to launch a kayak from a dock, but if it says that, it says that,
If
right?
you read through the terms and conditions, also says, no dredging, and we're not even asking for dredging. If you go through the terms and conditions of the permit.
I'm just trying not to like say yes to something that seems to explicitly say the opposite thing.
Right.
Because I'm not trying to be a stickler, but it does seem to say that pretty clearly. I mean, the definition of a boat or a vessel is also like a little, but
It's something, I mean, I agree.
Yeah.
It's something that floats. And actually, they make a distinction within vessel for PFDs. So like, so the kayaks and whatever, kayaks and canoes have special provisions. And frankly, there's even a separate provision for type of vessel. And rowing shells are specifically excluded from that provision, but they're still called a vessel. So they're all vessels, but they're not necessarily subject to the same sorts of requirements for safety equipment as other vessels, but otherwise they're considered vessels. This is the permit that you brought us.
Right. And I have a permit for the structure. So you're just arguing about the usage. So you're not arguing the legality of the dock going in there under your code. You're just arguing the usage.
I think the usage that you've described doesn't match here. Doesn't match what's in the permit. It's internally inconsistent. You're calling it kayak launch on your permit. Whereas where vessels are specifically restricted in the permit from being launched from the dock. So match. So you've called it a dock launch or a kayak launch, but you can't use it as a kayak launch in your submission. It can't be used the way that you're submitting it.
So the only thing you want me to do is straighten out the verbiage of the usage. So you're not against the dock going in because the dock is within town code. All you want me to do is rephrase and then get the usage of the dock straightened out. So do you object to the dock or just the verbiage of the usage?
Well, I mean, I have some objections to the dock, but mostly, because I think under the existing code, it probably goes through. There's no depth requirement in our code. There's a minimum depth. I mean, here's my question is, if you're going to use it as a kayak launch, which I don't think you should, could it be shorter? Because to go out as far as you've gone to get to 2 feet, well, 2 feet is irrelevant because you can't use it to more anyway. So you could save some money.
Well, the 2 feet brings us out to where we have a consistent amount of water to get to the more navigable water.
Well, but then it goes back down to 1.9 again after. I mean, you look at the bottom of your bathymetric grid, and it's 1.9 again. So you've gotten to a hole, in the overall scheme of not very much, but it's slightly deeper. You're able to reach a 2 foot depth, but then it gets shallower again by your own bathymetric grid. So does that 2 foot, is there any sort of talismanic value of 2 feet of water? What do you need to get to 2 feet of water for? Because if you can't take a vessel, if you can't moor a vessel there, You want to bring a boat in at higher tide, I guess I have no issue with that, because there's water. But you can't leave it there overnight because it's going to get hot. So from the
So do you have this hydrographic survey or bathymetric survey for the whole entire Dickerson Creek? Because I have it out to 2 feet to where it stops.
Right.
So, basically what I'm listening to straighten out is, are you against the dock or are you against the usage? Because I can have the verbiage.
Here's what I'm saying is this.
So, but you see where this ends? This
Yeah,
ends at
this
2,
ends.
and it doesn't go any further. So,
1.9, 1.9, 1.9, 1.7.
but this is what we don't have. We don't have that
That's
information.
true, that's true. I think, Tom's just attested, he feels that it's shallow, the cost. But my basic point is this, if you came back to me with a kayak launch, I would be okay with that. I think it fits the nature of the creek, it fits the nature of what you're trying to do there, or what you're proposing to be doing. It's actually a kayak launch, as opposed to, 2.5 feet above mean high water, jumping off into the water, and it's not the same, it's not a kayak launch. So what I think has happened is that the DEC said, we've got a design standard for a kayak launch. And then somehow this fixed dock got submitted as a kayak launch. But in fact, the kayak launch is a floating dock low to the water. It's not even a regular floating dock. It's half.
Where did that definition come from?
I don't know, it's in here.
It's in where?
What do you mean, wait?
You're.
My definition of a kayak launch,
Yeah,
as a user and that's what a kayak launch is.
but that's got nothing to do with the town code.
But then why is it called a dock? And why is it called a kayak launch on during the dock?
Is that a term that's used by the DEC, like kayak launch is a designated term, or?
Yeah.
Or just like common
It's for
sense
a small, but whether it's a canoe or a kayak, whatever you
Well,
want.
that's common practice,
Yes.
like that
Yeah,
nomenclature.
we've done probably 3 of them on Shelter Island in the past 2 years, or 3 years.
And in much shallower water.
I do think, it's hard to say that you need a floating dock, I think.
Right.
Because it's your subjective opinion. I think it's wise, but I'm not, that doesn't mean you have to,
Right.
A lot of things can be done better, but if it's not written, it's hard to enforce, I think.
Right. It's just, to me, it seems like it's a different thing. It's a different category of thing. This is a dock.
Right.
And that's a kayak.
You could walk down that ladder, drop your kayak in the water, walk down the ladder and get into it from the water. You're staying off the vegetation, you're not unsafely getting in from the ladder. Like, there is a hybrid, it's weird, but it works, and it's
Right.
safer than what you explained, which I agree with.
Right. And yes, I could say you could do that with a shorter dock. Why do you need to go out 90 feet, 50 feet, 60 feet?
Yeah, who are we to say they
What if you wanna
can't?
get-
Who are we to say they can't, I guess? And I'm not trying to be confrontational, but why not?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it just seems out of character with the Dickerson Creek.
You want to get past the mud, because when you approach there, there's mud, and obviously grasses. So you want to get past that, and that's really the point.
Well, every inch you get of water is valuable in the kayak, right? You're like 1 inch is the difference between floating and not, so.
You tend to push in from the shore where you have not.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Typical approach. Okay, well, so the other issue is, sort of going back to the terms of the permit itself. So you have it's a 6-inch diameter pile. So it's a mismatch with the permitted size of pile. So what your plan says is 8 inches. The permit says 6.
Plans are stamped. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things in here for their general rules that aren't always consistent. So, if you want me to have that straightened out, if you're asking me to straighten out some simple 6 or 8 inch piles, I can do that. And just give me a list of what you want straightened out as far as the verbiage, because as far as this dock application goes, it conforms to the town code. And so it's just a matter of, so you want me to have that changed to DEC from 8-inch to 6-inch piles? And you want me to have the usage changed? Just give me my list, give me my margin.
I want to clarify, they might have been specific about the 6, and then then the 8-inch came in. They might have said it's for a kayak launch, it's actually 6 inches because they're going with the float. They're expecting a float.
There's no flow.
I know. There's no float in your proposal, but they might have set.
But there's no restriction in my proposal also, and they say I can't do that either.
Sure, but they also don't, they made specific changes. That's not standard language in that, it's not boilerplate, the specific talking about the 6 inches and then, having a no float, and the 4x4 posts either. Those are things that are specifically put in there for this permit. They're changed from permit to permit. I've reviewed other permits. It's not consistent. So it was put in this one specifically.
It's generally in the marshy areas where they want it smaller. Like I said, landward of low water in marshy areas, they generally like to see 4x4s.
Right. But then where did the 6 inches come from? It's specific. It's not typical for a standard dock. It's specific to yours.
Like
It's not- that's here in other
that's just in, but it's not on their stamp, they have their stamp plans right here.
Yeah, but
That is spelled out in the plans, 8-inch file.
the permit that I'm looking at has the 6 inches.
So I'll have that straightened out. 6 or 8-inch piles. Then you want the usage, a verification of the usage, as it seems to be confusion about the usage.
I think
But
that
as far as the structure, though, is there any problem with the structure itself?
So-
You seem to have a problem with the usage, you have a problem with the 6-inch or 8-inch piles. Do you have a problem with the structure that goes to count, that conforms to town code? Do you have a problem with that?
As it goes to the code and the specifics that are in there, I think it meets those. I think from the towns, it's not in the town's interest to have it there. So I don't think it violates the codes specifically, like any of those particular things about depth or whatever, because we don't have depth. It doesn't violate length.
There's no, this isn't.
Doesn't violate setbacks. Doesn't violate setback. It doesn't violate the length. We don't have a minimum depth. So on those fronts, I agree. I think it's not in the town's interest to have a dock there.
But the thing is, it doesn't interfere with navigation. It's the last house on the thing. So, if you're saying it's not interest in town, who? There's no other
Yeah,
access
who?
to interfere with.
You
The
know,
last dock.
I'm part of the town. I'd like to be able to visit them with my boat.
Okay.
So,
I
you
think
know,
that the
why is it-
ambiance of the creek will be forever
That's-
changed by
Your
your size of structure in that creek.
You're entitled to your opinion, but
That regardless of whether it fits in this code or the previous code, I don't think that, basically, what I think is that the benefit to the people and the town itself is more than the benefit to an individual property owner in this particular case.
But what they're trying to do is avoid the disturbance of vegetation. That's ultimate.
I understand that, but in the
That's what's
process, they're putting in a 90-foot structure that's, what, 4 or 5 feet above water level, or 3 or 4 feet above the water. It's a giant structure
The vegetation then goes down where it meets the water.
in this mostly natural end of the creek. There's a very small dock next to it that even, it's just a small rickety thing. And other than that, this structure is gonna overwhelm the creek. And look at it. Look at an overview. Would you put a 4 by 90-foot dock in the water there is gonna be an eyesore. It's gonna be plain as day, and in my opinion, it doesn't benefit the community, and it only benefits the individual dock owner.
When does the dock ever benefit more than the person getting it?
In this particular case, there isn't a lot of docks there. It's an almost pristine.
I guess I hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
but at the same token, it seems subjective when you get to make that, but not you, but someone would make that
What I'm
decision.
saying is I think that basically what I said was the overall benefit to the town to leave that creek as it is better than throwing a dock in there for somebody to kayak or fish or anything.
I don't,
We haven't heard from Mark yet. We've heard from you, Al. Mark? Do you have anything to say you want to share?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I was just asking if you had anything to share. Because I think everybody's
The
shared
only
something, but you haven't said anything yet. So I just want to make sure you're able to chip in.
For some of the newer members on the board, about 2 years ago, somebody came to the committee and wanted to put a dock in from the heights. And there were no docks along that whole area. And we said it was a dangerous place and it wasn't a suitable place for a dock, put a boat. And the gentleman said, well, I really am not concerned with the boat. I want to bring a chair down there and read in the afternoons for its tranquility. and we approved it. And now we have two docks in the same vicinity, and they're requesting a dock, and their whole statement is that you've already approved one dock, you could put another one in. And it didn't make a big difference. If we do this, and we may, I don't see where there's any place on, virtually any place on the island where someone could say that I want to put a dock, I don't want to put a dock in, I want to put a kayak launch in. And therefore, we're opening up not just to Dickerson Creek or there, but to any place that wants to put a kayak dock in at 90 feet, as opposed to a boat dock at 100 feet. So I think there may be repercussions, and we should consider that. And I don't know if the code is silent on a kayak dock. I believe it probably is. So I think the town code talks about a dock or no dock. It doesn't have that third category of maybe a dock. So I think that has to be taken into consideration when we look at this for this individual, as opposed to what we look forward to in the future.
You were saying you want to leave the creek as it is, right?
Well,
All right.
for the most
So,
part.
okay, for the most part. Now, there's a proposal to allow commercial boats in there.
Yes, along
so-
that area that's
Okay,
navigable,
so-
that I call navigable.
Okay, so that's not leaving it as it is. We're talking about, here, this is a navigable area that's, can I finish? Go ahead. It's a navigable area, all right, it's maintained by the Suffolk County Department of Public Works. The reason it's being maintained by them is because we're using it for boats. Okay, it isn't like there's gonna be a million other docks in there, there's only two or three other houses in there that, and I don't even think that they will not have this same opportunity. All right, because they won't have the depth. Our new code says 2.5 feet. When these people applied, they applied in good faith for the code that we have. And I don't think it's fair to let them go on more than a year, all right, through the moratorium, through all this, and now torturing them about, use of, being able to use the water in front of their house, as would have been allowed or is allowed, under the pre-existing code. I think it's just torture, and it is not fair. It's not fair to the people.
Okay, now, as per any usage of the bulkheaded section there, I'm not talking about adding structure there. I'm talking about adding a structure that's 90 by 40 in the middle of that creek. And it's gonna change the creek forever. Whether or not there's boats tied to that bulkhead over there isn't gonna change the ambience of that creek. Okay, what's gonna change the ambience of that creek is a dock right in the middle of it.
There's nothing in the code about ambience, all
That,
right?
to me, whether or not, whether something can be built and should be built are not the same thing.
But should
Whether-
is
To be
subjective.
perfectly honest with you, I don't care whether the code says you can or cannot build something. This, to me, personally, is a question of whether it should be built. Not whether or not you can, but whether you should. And this is something that's going in, and this dock is gonna be here forever.
Tom, that's out of our purview.
So
That's out of our purview. We're not here to make an opinionate, we're not here to make opinion
I don't
judge.
see any reason for me right now to change my vote from what it was previously. I'm not for this structure in this creek. That's the way I feel about it. Regardless of little
Looks like-
knickknacks
it looks like
inside
somebody
the
jumped in.
No, okay.
limits of the law, that's the way I feel.
Yes.
Just, if you permit me, I have just point of reference, right? So it may possibly be in the applicant's interest currently, right? To look into the discrepancies in the permit that's before you, right? Because although it's compliant under the town code, if you were to issue this tonight, as it's presented to you there, they would still be beholden to the permit conditions at the state level. Okay, so if in that state permit it says you can't use it for X, Y, and Z, and any of X, Y, and Z are things that the applicant may actually want to do and didn't realize that this permit was going to prohibit it, they may want to relook at that, have a conversation with their contractor and the DEC and say, well, we didn't mean that specific thing. We were just talking about a kayak launch in the terms of conversation. Perhaps they thought that meant something else. So even if you issued this tonight, you, the applicant, would receive a doc that they would have a list of things that they're not allowed to use it for.
Question for you, who actually enforces that?
Well,
Is that you?
It.
Or like the, I mean,
At the local level,
Okay.
right. So the way that plays out is somebody who's concerned about what's going on there, sees, says, person A is using a dock for X, Y, and Z. Happen to know, because it's a matter of public record, that this is a prohibited use. That complaint would come into us, it would be forwarded to the DEC for their enforcement division, because it's a violation of a state permit, and it would go that direction, right?
Right.
That's just how these things played out. We've done this before, we've had this, played this game before. So it may be just semantics ultimately, and some confusion that got lost in conversation about what you might use it for, right? Any dock, I might use, I'm gonna launch my kayak off the dock. That doesn't make it a kayak launch, but in conversation, you could say that's what I wanted to use it for. So it may be worth clarifying that, right?
I have no particular issue with that. I mean, I guess I would say if we were to go ahead, I would be more inclined, I'd be more inclined to, to approve if it was in our, if it was in our permit that it's not allowed to be used for mooring of boats. Just sort of echoing what's in the state permit as it stands. I mean, yes, it's in there. But I think it's helpful, it clarifies things if it's also in ours. Or the town board talks about it when they're considering it.
A little asterisk with that, Matt, right? Like, our permit couldn't allow it, right? We can
Right, yeah.
be more restrictive, but not less restrictive than the next agency.
Right,
So if they say you can't tie a boat to it, we couldn't give them a permit that says you can.
right.
Does more,
So we could clarify that it's also in our permit as well.
does more mean for like any amount of time, or like overnight, or?
I had an extensive conversation about this with John. If John, you're on. With John Needham, your uncle. And, he's like, he was very clear. He's like, moorings overnight, it's through the tide cycle.
Okay.
And so it's, so for to pull up, and I think, especially, at tide when you've got water, okay, what are you gonna, what's the harm? It's leaving it there over a cycle, which is the issue. And that's that's sort of the specific language that I think that the DEC permit's talking about, as well as, I guess with as John was saying as well. So, we had an extensive conversation about it. If it is actually being used for a kayak, that'll be great. If you should, I see that, but using it for to moor a boat, no. I don't think, I guess it's in the DEC permit now. I don't think it should go through, not on the basis of these specifics, but on the basis of the general interest of the town. If we want to go to a vote, I think that's okay.
One sticky thing for me, like my vote would be, that like no launching it from it, is that gonna be an issue? Like it says explicitly, don't launch. That's the one thing that I don't like. I mean, I don't think throwing a kayak off of about anything is an issue personally, but
Right.
it's hard when it says that, like, word for word.
It's kind of, yeah.
It says
I mean, that's kind of damning. I mean, I mean, that being said, what do you do? Like, can you pull a kayak through vegetation into the water by foot?
I don't know, but that's kind of why I was like, well, it's.
Because it kind of defeats the whole purpose if you're gonna do that.
Yeah. That's what was breaking my head initially when I was looking, I was like, doesn't match, then maybe sort of like go back and go, how did it get to this point?
The piling thing to me just seems like a clerical thing, but something we want to have straight, which I appreciate.
Right, well, I was like, how did that, looking at it, I was like, how did this come to pass? And I was
Yeah.
like, well, it could have come to pass if they had a design standard for a float style kayak launch that's
Right.
actually on the ground. And then you don't need as heavy a pile because you're not actually maintaining a boat moored at that dock. It doesn't have to be as strong, a 6-inch pile. It's not as robust. You don't need an 8 because it's only a float for kayaks.
Does the launching thing bother you, or it's just like kind of like normal phrasing?
It's normal phrasing. But so what I'm gonna suggest now is, obviously you guys are just against the dock. But it does seem like I have to get clarification on the usage. Because, you guys are an advisory committee. You do not give the permit. It goes to these guys. Just so everybody's clear on that. I get it, but it does seem like there's a problem here with Article 14 as far as clarity on the usage of it. And so what I would like to do is come back to you guys with that clarity, and we could also get clarity on the 6 or 8 inch pile, but that doesn't really, if we're gonna hang on with things that simple, that doesn't really make a difference.
That's not particularly, it just indicates that something was off, that they wrote it for a different purpose. That's what it says to me. Just like understanding my sort of thought process, which I'm sure is.
Okay, so there's two things that I'm gonna seek clarity on, the size of the piles and the usage. So the plan is gonna come back the same. So the ultimate question is gonna be, it's to code. You guys are gonna, if people could just go with your gut, obviously, and not really refer to the town code and what is allowable at this site. It does not interfere with navigability, it's under the requirements of the town code. But I think what we have to do is table this application until we get clarity on usage and piling size. More so than anything is the usage.
Right, if we were to vote it forward with that usage constraint, do you have a problem with that? And then we could just go forward, and you don't have to go back and tangle with the DEC.
Let me ask you, what problem do you see with tying a boat up that has a 13-inch draft on overnight on an area that the mean low water is 2 feet? That's almost a foot clearance
So
between that and the bottom. And there's plenty of instances where people have docks where they are right on that same margin.
Now, I actually had this conversation with John.
Oh.
Actually, I said,
Right.
can we do something with a depth constraint? He said, we've never done that before. It's kind of problematic. So, maybe we could do that. And maybe, I don't know whether
What's,
anybody else.
yeah, I don't see a major problem with that, especially since there's a town bulkhead within a couple of 100 feet.
But that's totally, now, come on, that's a dredged area. It's totally different.
I understand that, but if my point being is if they come home and the tide is too low, all right, let's say you have an extreme tide, all right, the family is smart enough to tie up on the bulkhead for a couple of hours, which they're allowed to do, and then come back and get the boat. It's only a couple of, it's.
Sure, but it's more about the boat being there through the tide cycles. It's not about the one time they took it out and couldn't get back in.
There's almost a foot of clearance at the lowest tide.
But you just said that it's not always the case, that actually they might actually have to stop up. That's the whole point, is that.
If it, on an extreme tide.
Sure,
On
so they're
an
gonna move it
extreme
out
tide.
and they're gonna watch the tide tables and find out when the neap tides are, and that's not how I don't think that's how we do the permitting.
That's not how we
DEC
do
does
the
the
permitting.
permitting.
I'm saying that there's enough clearance under their boat to not hit bottom under
Sure. Al,
most
the
cases.
DEC issued a permit saying you couldn't moor a boat there, full stop. So you can argue with DEC.
Well,
But what's here?
All I'm saying is, let's not go any further. Let's just table the application so I get clarity from the DEC. I don't want to go above you guys, get the clarity, and then present it to the board. I'd rather, come back to you guys with the clarity, even though I don't think you or Matt are going to, I'm sorry.
We can switch seats.
You know what I'm saying? I'd rather have the clarity. So,
Regardless of the permit or the application, it all should be clear, regardless of which.
Yeah,
which application.
I really appreciate what Jack just said. And let us not guess what the town board will do or what they're dealing with. If he's suggesting that they can get more clarity on what it is, it would help us a tremendous amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, and that way I'm not going around you guys, then providing these guys with more information. I'll provide you with more information, then we'll move on to the town board. Is that fair enough? All right,
Thank you.
call Bill.
We should wait for him to come back in.
Yeah, you don't want that chair anymore, right?
No, I didn't want it. You're not me. Confusion.
So those,
Bill.
those the Fagans that who was sitting in here?
I think so.
Okay, which is fine, I was just curious, I assumed, but.
Yeah.
Are they allowed to speak during something like this?
Yeah.
They could, okay, I just wasn't sure.
Yeah.
All right, I don't know what you guys are doing in here for a half an hour, but we gotta really crank.
All right.
Let's see. This is mine, right? Was there a vote or anything?
So they pulled, they're gonna go and try to get clarity. I mean, if briefly, if you wanna, we need to just now.
No, I'll watch this thing tomorrow.
Are you gonna do Kramer, or we?
Oh, yeah, let's do Kramer should be, should I say? Kramer should be
We can't
easy.
go through it again.
Kramer should be easy. So Kramer is the property along Deering Harbor. And the WMAC had approved the original application, which entailed two projects, basically the dock and the bulkhead, contingent upon receipt of the DEC permit, which took months to get. We finally have that, but in the process, DEC changed the permit, changed the plans, requiring that the retaining wall be tapered off, adding a return to the retaining wall, and adding vegetation. Does that pretty much cover it? From my perspective, if the town board does not see any wetlands issues raised by those changes, then, I think we're all good on the bulkhead, from my perspective. We'll go around the room. On the dock, there was a violation for unpermitted for utilities that were hooked up without a permit, but that permit's been obtained, so I'm good on the dock also. So, anybody see anything else here with the changes that?
Why did they, you say that they tapered what was that, at the ends or something?
Just it's the south end of the structure. They didn't think it needed to be a full revetment, so they decreased the size of the stone.
Oh, okay.
Or just.
Because of the DEC.
This is the one where the highway department's concerned with the road, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
This was the emergency.
Right, and I thought you guys had already voted on this, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, no, we
did, right?
voted on it, on the old plans, and what I'm pointing out is that there's been some minor changes to those plans, and we basically said contingent upon getting the DEC permit, because we didn't have one at the time, so now we got it, but it makes changes to the plans, so we're just, do we have any problems with those minor changes to the plans? That's it, really.
Okay, yeah. I have no problem with it.
I have no issue, yeah.
You good? Good.
Surprise everybody.
Mark? You good?
Yeah.
We're good.
Thanks, have a good night. Thank
All right. See you, Jackie.
I have a question.
6:00. Oh.
Putting this on it's on the agenda for the work session tomorrow. With being able to do the resolution after the work session and the special meeting. Will we zoom in to just in case the rest?
I don't know, but I'll answer any question you want right now.
No, I don't have any questions, but just as far as presentation.
Have
mean, we looked at the wetlands issues the first time, and these changes don't really, in my mind, I can only speak for myself.
Yeah, I just was wondering if anyone was gonna be available, just in case somebody does.
There's no public hearing, so it should.
Want to cover my bases. Okay, we'll wing it, and I'll wing it.
I'm good.
Okay.
Right, thanks.
Thanks, Jack.
There's a question?
Okay, let's see, what else we got? So the other item on, for other business, we've got the rules and regulations. Basically, you know, I think it's not something we're gonna hammer out tonight. So basically, if you recall, Article 2, I had drafted this whole thing, submitted to Bo, because I had some concerns about enforcement issues and so forth. Bo astutely reorganized everything, and I think did a great job in a framework, and basically set it up so that we would have rules and regulations that could be adopted and changed over time, so that, I mean, it's just a much more streamlined process than trying to do what we did in the past year and a half. So basically, he's got some suggestions here for Congdon Creek. And Deering Harbor, and then Dickerson Creek, where there previously weren't. We didn't have anything on Dixon before. He just got, he used Deering Harbor and just copied Deering Harbor over. So I just request that everyone read this over between now and the next meeting, come up with any thoughts that you have about what. Yeah, definitely.
The three proposals, if you will, that you have there, right? The first one, regarding Common Creek Dock, all of that proposal is primarily rooted in the code, the verbiage, the language that we actually took out of the old code, right? Reorganized into a logical, linear manner, and then listed, bulleted back in there under its title. Anything in black is stuff that was in the code previously. It's not new, it's not proposed, it's not far-fetched. It's something that was already in there. Maybe I changed the spelling or just the flow of it to make it actually coherent, because sometimes it wasn't. Essentially what existed to begin with. Anything that's in blue on that one is something that I have identified a known issue with that we've experienced under the old code, and have offered a suggestion, thought, or proposal to address that. Okay? On the second document, the Deering Harbor document, all of that is black, because all of that was from the existing code. It is just reorganized and put into a manner that's easier to digest and understand. Okay? Third document, so there's absolutely no proposals in there whatsoever. The third document, Grace's Lane, is a copy, paste, change the name document from the Deering Harbor concept. Okay? And that was exclusively proposed, the whole concept of the permit itself, in the regulations relating to that permit, was because there was feedback and interest from the community in having broader access to that area during the off-season. Right, so we have now realized within the code that we're allowed to do that. We want to allow people to be there during the off-season. And I used an existing concept to create the initial proposal for some regulations in this new area. The only thing that's different is the names. That's it. These are intended to cut the workload of everybody significantly, so that way we don't have to create entire regulatory documents from thin air. It's not something that has to be permanent. It's just a point to start and to sort of codify and centralize all of the information that we already had in terms of moving forward. That's all it is.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah, the only two things I want to point out, because they came up, they were raised during the whole dock code revision, was on Congan Creek, and I put it out there now for people to think about. Points I just definitely do not want to overlook these. You put in there, no permit shall be issued to an applicant who owns waterfront property. Two people, one who has a dock that has no access to navigable water. It's pretty much, like Fagan Dock. Or worse, it's on the inside of Gardner's Creek. Yeah.
We heard that, Bill.
It's on the inside of Gardner's Creek, I believe. But anyway, they have a dock, but it's not, can't be used for a boat. And someone else.
Next one, can I have a perspective on that? Just the reasoning behind this, right, is there's an applicant, there's a permittee, maybe even two, at the town dock right now, where there is a 25-year, 157-person long waiting list. There's an applicant down there who has a fully navigable dock that he keeps another boat at all of the time. Perfectly permitted under previous code, no problem. I've just thought that it might be something to think about moving forward. It also should be very, very, very apparent, or I want to clarify, all of this is moving forward, right? These rules get rolled in going forward. This isn't, there's no look back. I'm not proposing to go to that person and take them away. I'm saying new permits wouldn't be issued, right? That was the theory behind it.
Okay, and then and I think that makes total sense, and I think you were going in the right direction, just to always find these,
It's kind of my thing,
yeah.
right? The mooring permits, right? Sorry, it took 3 years.
The only other one really was a situation where an individual has waterfront property, have a dock. They're on a waiting list to get into Congdon Creek, and they are planning on selling the house with the dock. So basically, the language I thought that addressed both of those was no permit shall be issued to an applicant who owns waterfront property with a dock in navigable water at the time of permit issuance. So something like that, just. But
So Billy, it's worth noting as well, right? The wait list procedure and policy and procedure is or should be something separate from this, right? Because if you get down to the wait list category, right, it'll say the wait list maintained by pursuant to rules and regulations for that. So perhaps somebody who currently owns property could go on the wait list, it's a 25-year, right?
Right.
On the wait list itself. But if they were to still own fully navigable waterfront property when their term came up, then they would have to either be selling their property or skipping their term, which is permitted under the hypothetical regulations. Just things.
I think you have to discriminate between waterfront property and waterfront property with a
Agreed.
dock.
Yeah, and that's what the whole process is hopefully going to bring to light, right?
Right.
I'm one person. I can only think of things in like 4
Right, I mean,
directions.
we have people along, Peconic that say, oh, I wouldn't put my boat out there, I wouldn't want a dock, but they have a slip inside a
Sure,
lagoon,
sure, right.
so.
Yeah, and if, again, if the body that is organizing this thinks that that's the right thing to do, then so be it, right? This is a democratic process. We're trying to develop something that is reasonable and palatable to the most of the users.
This is like, well, I don't know if it's on topic or not, but there's a minimum, you're putting in the beam restriction. Is there a way to fit in, given the constraints on given the length of the list, more boats if you change the slip configuration, or the
Hypothetically.
2 boats per slip, or, if they're small boats kind of a thing, or it's.
Hypothetically, but right now, like the average slip size is about 9.5 feet right now. The only reason I put that
Narrow,
in
but maybe
there at
that's
all
the
is
slip.
because
I was gonna ask him that.
we couldn't physically accommodate a boat with a 13-foot beam. So why would we entertain an application and go through the whole process, right?
10-6, the slip beam, is that?
11 is the maximum beam width right now.
Yeah.
And
Right,
also like
so I
this.
said 10-6 because, right, you know, you
Still,
gotta,
tying a boat up to not move
we
6
had
inches
an
in a flow
we
is
had a
gonna be real hard,
permittee down
so.
there who changed his boat one time and took a chainsaw and widened his slip.
Yeah.
So we wanna try to avoid some stuff like this, right? Like, you know, just little things that have popped up along the way. I appreciate the
Well, some people think pushing pilings is an acceptable.
can-do
which
attitude,
is
but
not.
maybe we just avoid that, right? So you wanna make it a 10 for whatever, right? If that's just based on the practical nature.
Realities that we're dealing
Widths
with,
that we have currently.
Yeah.
Right. So.
right? So that's something, some homework between now and next meeting, if we could all kind of put eyes on that.
As I pointed out to Billy, right, the permits for Common Creek Dock have already been issued for this year. So, and they were issued under the old code, and we're working that way, right? The town clerk isn't gonna go back and, what doesn't make any sense. So that needs to be hammered out before January, right? Because that's when the renewals for that stuff come up and new permits would be issued and so on and so forth. The other two permits, in theory, because we're operating under that code, this code now, the new code, and those have not been issued yet, would be subject to the new code requirements, restrictions, regulations, whatever it has to be. So that's the middle of September is when those would probably, right, that according to the permit, that's when you can apply for it. I would expect there's gonna be 6, 8, 10 applications that come in for that dock. And we had better have some regulations in place by that point. So a little bit of a time crunch, but not gotta be done by tomorrow type of thing.
Yeah, well, nice to get it out of the way before the summer, but, okay.
A
Is
couple
in
things,
color on the website?
In color on the website. I don't know, I can just email it to you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that, what's
I don't
that?
know.
He wants to know if the distinction in color is visible.
I have it in your email? Yeah, you got it in your email. Yep,
Okay, well, we didn't get.
just send it out to you.
Okay.
This one?
Yeah.
I think you have one.
Oh, yeah, you got it, we got,
In the packets?
I think it's in the back of the main, the agenda-based one.
They also were included in the original doc, Article 2 doc recommendations.
Oh, yeah.
I just
It was the
excerpted
first
them out of that.
It's on the cover.
I think it was like the third page and fourth page or something in the packet.
The meeting agenda.
Yeah, it's right
on the back of
right
it.
behind the agenda.
The only thing I did notice in there, Bo, that I saw, and I know it's a sore subject,
Thank you.
53-7A-7 didn't transfer into your thing, and that is the 2-hour tie-up at Town Dock. I just wanted that to be part of somehow. And also with the other docks as well.
Yeah.
One of the things here that you saw for Dickerson, I saw was, end float could be permitted. I was
Yeah.
wondering if maybe we could talk about the float being remaining for 2-hour tie-up. That was one of my things that I thought we could discuss.
Yeah.
But also the return of the 2-hour in Common Creek, that dock. I mentioned that to you earlier, Amber. And also, it wasn't mentioned in the Grand Harbor that during the height of the summer, it's 2-hour. I didn't see that in there either. I don't know whether that's.
That would have been in the, not in the permitting section, that would have been in the, no docking without a permit, subject to these exemptions. It was further up in the document. Should have been. Could have been, right. It was exempted uses, without a permit.
Oh,
It's further up in there.
it's there.
Yep, yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you, Tom, I don't think I put the Common Creek dock thing in there.
Yeah, I didn't see it. That's why I branched out to the other two.
And
'Cause
I know it's still in Deer Harbor, largely, that's just because I think that we are able to accommodate those very, very small and few instances where that needs to be accomplished without having legislation stipulating one way or the other, right? My thought there was to decrease the amount of things that the law is telling us we have to do or don't have to do, and so on and so forth. We differ a little bit on that, I understand the intent is still the same. And if there's a way to address that through the regulatory side of things, I encourage us to try and figure that out. I think that's fine. If it's something that needs to be addressed that way, then we should do that.
I just don't want that to be forgotten about. It's been
Bring
a
it, bring it
while.
forward when we're with your list of
Yep.
thoughts. Okay, good. Thanks, Bill. Then the last item, because I already covered Smith Cove stuff, is the dock application form review. So this needs to be updated now that the code's been updated. I haven't read over the, that's, but one of the suggestions either Christina or Amber or both made was that we have a checklist on here rather than making people go through the code and try to figure out what exactly they need to include, not include, or printing a lot of the code here for them to deal with. So, I guess if each member could go through and take a look. This, I guess we could throw our ideas out there. It seems more like something that like Amber would want to
Yeah, no,
create.
it is purely administrative, but every time we provide this type of form, we ask for input, just if you wanna see anything in there. Any new lines in the, front page, is there any information that you're typically seeking, but it's never included in an application, right?
What's the reason for the cost of the work now that we're not doing pilings?
Because you need, you're right, it's not, because you don't need permit, it's something, yeah. Understand that.
Yeah, it's either under 10,000 or over 10,000,
For example,
that's it,
yeah.
yeah. And the other thing, on the cost of the permits, wasn't there's something from the town attorney that said that the cost should reflect what it would cost to not administer it, but to supervise it or check on it, and shouldn't go beyond that. I thought that was in Mr. Leventhal's.
Leventhal's what?
Right.
Like when would he have said that, or where, what's that
It
coming?
was,
It was when the town board was working on the code itself. I feel like,
Right.
go back to my notes, I feel like there was a reason for keeping the cost in there.
For the cost, the total cost of work, or for the cost of the permit itself?
the cost of the permit is what we're talking about. What I'm talking about now, I did mention about the cost of the work. Doesn't really apply anymore now that you're not charging for the permit by number of pilings, which was, I think that was that. But he also had said something that you shouldn't even be charging like an administrative fee for people because they are salaried by the town. It was supposed to be the cost of whatever it costs to, I think it was like supervise, I don't have the exact terminology, but it was.
An inspection? Is that what
So it would be the actual administrative cost, I would imagine, is what he was saying, of the processing of the application.
He was saying that exactly
So,
was illegal because they are salaried.
well,
It was very different. It was very different.
You're starting to talk about what fees could be passed on.
Right.
So it's in a different discussion. So it wasn't with the doc code, it had to do with.
Okay, yes.
So we have our application fee, but if we're going to bill for the environmental consultant on an application or has to go to, seeker or, anything,
Right.
then we can bill extra, but we can't bill for the town engineer, for the building department. So that was the discussion on that piece.
okay.
I actually, sorry, on the total cost of work, I actually do think it's helpful for transparency.
Rather than the application.
Doesn't hurt anything, right?
Well,
Think it could?
I think it could. I think it kind of, you know, if you're asking, you want to know who the contractor is and then you want to know what they're charging, you know, what kind of,
What do you think it would hurt someone?
it could hurt, I think it could hurt the contractors if they're, you know.
Mike, it might be a good way to,
They might be scrutinized for the
Yeah, right.
project.
Not necessarily, I'm saying,
we help the public be doing cost comparing. Like Costello does it for
Well-
10 grand, this other guy does it for 8 grand. I mean,
right, well,
that's a public benefit.
It helps substantiate, I guess, the amount of work being done to to a vague extent, but I don't know whether that's the job of this form or not.
yeah, I think that's going beyond, you know, I think it should be, is the job over 10 or under 10, that's it.
So, yeah, if everyone could take a look at this, I mean,
How do you want
probably
this?
the easiest way to do it, Christina, would be if we got a new form from Amber and then we punched holes in it. But, I know it'd be easier for her if we put together a bunch of ideas and things that we'd like to see in it and then get it to her.
What do you want, Bill? Just like emails of suggestions? Is that the easiest
Yes.
way to get it?
Yeah,
Yeah, email's perfect.
all right. That's all I have. Anybody else have anything else? No? Benj, did you want to, you know, as a liaison that thought the meeting was at 6, did you have anything that you wanted?
We should move the meetings to second.
Actually, the next one is scheduled for 6, but we might do it at 5 because the agenda might be onerous,
So in
so.
that case, I'll come.
You're supposed to come at 6.
Motion to adjourn,
Second.
all right, thanks. Oh, boy.